All right, Jake, I'm going to do my best Peter Gabriel here and just read from the liner notes. Seeing the dangers of the steep cliff, our courageous hero stands impotent and glowers. He follows a small path running along the top and watches the tube bobbing up and down in the water as the fast current carries it away. However, as he walks around the corner, Rael sees a skylight above him, apparently built into the bank. Through it, he can see the green grass of home. Well, not exactly. He can see Broadway. His heart, now a little bristly, is shaken by a surge of joy as he starts to run, arms wide open to the way out. At this precise point in time, his ears pick up on a voice screaming for help. Someone is struggling in the rapids below. It's John. He pauses for a moment, remembering how his brother had abandoned him. Then the window begins to fade. It's time for action. And that's where we're at in the story. So we are on side 4 of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. We've been on quite the journey with Rael, the Puerto Rican street punk, who has been on quite the psychedelic journey, if you will. He is in a position here after side 3 that got quite trippy on us. He is finished his escapades with the Lamia, who sexually assaulted him, and he then ate their bodies and contracted some venereal disease and went to the colony of Slippermen and had his manhood severed and put into a tube, and a raven came and picked it up and flew away and dropped it into a ravine. And here we are kind of seeing that tube floating away in the ravine. We also see an opportunity to escape this kind of hellish prison that Rael has found himself in. But he's got a decision to make here with Brother John, whether he's going to stay in this hellish place or whether he's going to escape. So, a lot to unpack, a lot coming up.
You gotta save your brother. Right?
Yeah, you got to save your brother, right? Yeah, there really isn't a choice. There really isn't a choice.
There isn't one. Yeah, this is the very strange climax and conclusion of the even stranger Lamb story arc. I've been racking my brain this week, Jared, on the many, many, many fan theories on what this album is all about. And I'm sure we'll dive in and unpack that as our discussion kind of unfolds this evening. But I've come to at least a story in my mind that I can live with, that kind of all the little parts line up with the tale of Rael here. And, through our conversation, it's probably the first time I've been able to kind of rationally put this album together in my head as a logical story, and one that really has some merit to it. I think there's a bit of counterculture message in this. I think, as you would expect from a band of this era and of this kind of wit. But there's a broader Peter Gabrielian tale here, right? About the inclusiveness of all things and the connectivity of life, and how things can transcend time and space and still remain connected. That to me seems like a very typical Peter. I say typical. I can't discredit the guy. A very classic Peter Gabriel story approach.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. And what you just described is going to show up here in this side of music more so than it has anywhere else. You've got our protagonist here with a significant choice ahead of him. We get into additional storytelling that actually, as we get into the light dies down on Broadway, that's the only track on this entire album where the lyrics were written by someone other than Gabriel. And I think that Banks and Rutherford wrote those lyrics and did a good job of kind of creating the synopsis of what was going on in the story. But then to your point, we get into this really kind of deep question of self-acceptance and forgiveness and two sides of the same being, with, who brother John really is, kind of this metamorphical journey, if you will, realism versus fantasy. I just think that it does show a common thread throughout kind of Gabriel's his time with Genesis and even beyond. So I'm excited that you're coming to that conclusion, and I agree. This has been a really great opportunity just to digest this insides and appreciate it even more.
Yeah, it's kind of a wacky story on its surface, and just it's the climax of the classic, what we consider the classic lineup of Genesis, right? This is the final work that we get from the five-piece kind of OG group here, and I think it's fitting that it goes out on such a wacky number, just such an out there. Like, how do you out-prog this, right? It's just like it's the proggiest thing of all time.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on it, the final track, and I think that we'll dissect those a little bit as we play it, and then kind of reflect on it after the fact. We are going to play the side. We are cheating a little bit, as I told you in part 3. We kind of pulled Slipperman into part 3. But the Colony of Slippermen technically is on side 4 of the vinyl. But you can just imagine we wanted to include that in that story because it was just such a trippy third side of vinyl. And here we just get into a little bit more of the classic storytelling that we had on the first side, second side. And while that doesn't mean that it's, just a linear, straightforward story, I think it's going to do us justice on its own. So with that, we're going to play the Ravine, a short instrumental, and then we'll get into The Light Lies Down on Broadway. And again, as we listen to that, I just think it's really fascinating that they were just behind schedule. And, Gabriel takes years between his solo works, right? So knowing what he was dealing with at home, knowing the pressure that the record company was probably putting on him, knowing the pressure that Tony Banks was probably putting on him. There was one piece of music that didn't have lyrics for it, and it was a reprise of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, the opening track. To me, it's a really powerful track. It does a really good job of telling the story, and it's almost a bit fascinating for me because it is one of the better storytelling songs on this side. And just to think that Tony was never totally into the story, but he and Mike were able to kind of come together and write such a compelling story progressing piece of music, I think is really powerful. And then we are going to try and figure out where John is and how we're going to get to John, and then see what happens when we actually find him.
To your point, Jarrett, as we've been talking through that, it's important probably to point out just musically the reprise, right? And the fact that it's not new to Genesis. They've used a reprise on several of the previous albums, where they kind of bring back the original. We know that they're going to do that again in the future. It's a very kind of classic way of polishing off a work, right? That you bring that opening musical idea back around again. But what's interesting is it's not really the end of the album here, right? That you have the reprise, and then you have this epilogue, right? And I think that that's important to the story. And this is kind of using the musical form as a way to propel that story, which I find very interesting. In the past and the future, what you see from Genesis is the the reprise is it, right? This is the last statement of the album. So the fact that there's more to say after that last statement is made here, I think is important, or at least worth noting.
Yep, agreed. So I wanted to tell everybody that we're going to actually listen to the live cuts of this that were recently released as part of the 50th anniversary of the Lamb. And so this is from live at the Shrine Auditorium in January of 1975. We're going to just play the entire side from the live performance. I will admit that when I first started really diving into the Lamb, some of these instrumentals didn't land as hard with me as they do now. And there's a lot of that happening here on side 3 and side 4. But now I just find them to be really brilliant pieces of music, and the way they bridge together different scenes was really critical. And thinking about how they perform these bits live is something I wish I could jump in a time machine to go see.
All right, so here's Tony Banks flexing yet again. He's playing a part that sounds remarkably like a theremin, including that modulation in there that sounds like a hand wave kind of through the electric field of the theremin. But in reality, this is yet again the ARP pro soloist. How he has tweaked it to sound like a theremin, you got me. But really cool sound. Steve Hackett making very effective use of the volume pedal here for those little swelly guitar sounds.
Subway sounds, the sounds of complaint, the smell of acid on his gun of paint, as he carves out anger in a blood-red band. Destroyed tomorrow by an unknown hand. My home. Is this the way out from the endless sea, or just an entrance to another tree? And the light dies down.
His voice is just so powerful. These lyrics too, man. I mean, now that you know, you can kind of tell that they're Banks and Rutherford lyrics. Like they're just more obvious in the storytelling than Gabriel has been to this point. And I appreciate that about this song, because we kind of needed a chance to catch our breath and really understand what is going on here. And they do a good job of telling the story.
The gate is fading now, but open wide. But John is drowning. I must decide between the freedom I had in the rat race, or to stay forever in this forsaken place. Hey, John! He makes for the river, and the gate is gone. where it came from, and the light dies down, 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 down on Broadway.
Little quoting of On Broadway there again.
Yeah.
Little funk groove.
Yeah, not for nothing. This is one of my favorite songs on the whole album. This is Riding the Scree.
I believe this is 9/8 time.
Oh, nice. Scree, of course, is like loose stones that kind of cover a slope or a mountain. So he's trying to get down to where he heard John screaming, and he's only got one way to go. And it's hard footing. He's going to have to make a choice here, whether he dives in. And the music does such a good job of just conveying that urgency.
This is a little heroic, right?
Right.
It's a decision made. I just love this synthesizer. It's got such an 8-bit like vibe to it, right?
And Bill is just ripping in the background on those drums. Again, he said this was the happiest he ever was with the band, like just being able to sit back there, sing along, play this massive drum set that he had.
Just
And so many of these so many of these instrumentals, like they built them all together.
Clear down the slope, there's not much hope. I began to try to ride the Scree, but the rocks are tumbling all around me. If I want John alive, I gotta ditch my fear, take a dive. Well, I still got my drive to survive. You got nothing on me.
The classic.
Staying American all the way through, right?
Yeah, yeah.
These great American references.
Here he comes.
Bubbliness of that scent is also kind of cool. Very watery.
Mm-hmm. Now we'll move pretty quickly from In the Rapids from Riding the Scree into In the Rapids. And In the Rapids, I think, is a very classic, overlooked Genesis song. I mean, it's only 2 minutes, 20 seconds. But it really is emotional, it's powerful, moves the story forward, and then it ends with a pretty major plot twist.
moving down the water. John is drifting out of sight. It's only at the turning point that you find out how you fight. In the cold, feel the cold all around. And the rush of crashing water surrounds me with its sound, striking out to reach you. I can't get through.
I'm glad we're listening to these live versions because they just do such a great job setting the atmosphere. And they never stop playing.
We'll talk a little about the toll the tour took.
Yeah.
Jake for the alliteration win. Love when Peter does that gravelly kind of digs in. Gets some soul behind it. And again, the lead guitar is just, it's like a duet, right?
Mm-hmm. This just reminds me of any number of 80s game shows we used to watch. I have some issues. I have some issues with this as the closing track, but
well, it's, again, kind of put your theater hat on. This is the epilogue, right? This is the big. The whole company comes out and sings and does one last dance.
Yeah, and here we are with another brilliant lyric juxtaposition, right? Everything here is opposites. Very much on purpose.
Yeah, I think the music here tells the story that Peter Gabriel won't specifically tell you, right? And you can kind of hear the triumph of it, the idea that, right there, right? Rael's not dead. Rael has come to realize something that is life-affirming or life-changing in some way or another. But this is so positive, bright, and forward-looking. It's also super modern, right, for the time. I mean, the disco vibes.
Pay the toll, has no home in words so cold, not even in your favorite poem. It is hope for the dope, the rides the horse without a roof. It is Jacob, constant, cocktails
British wrestling.
When you read right through it, you see
Take the boy out of the country.
Right.
inside the spirit with enough grit to survive. If you think that it's pretentious, you've been taken for a ride. Look across
Those two lines are pretty much everything you need to know. It is real. It is Rael.
Cause it's only knocking on the wall that I like. Yes, it's only knocking on the wall, but I like it. Yes, it's only knocking on the
Still just bringing down the house back there.
Yep. All right. Well, it's only knock and know all, but I like it. So I think the Rolling Stone song had like literally come out a few months before this was written, and for him to kind of flip it and say knock and know all, you just and that there's this idea of basically just ask and you will discover. Just knock and you will know everything is the way I always interpret that. Especially after hearing those lines of "it is real, it is Rael." In the stage show, they kind of joke about just how disastrous the show could have been at times, but you certainly didn't hear that in this Los Angeles version that we just played. But I guess they would have Peter Gabriel dressed as Rael on one side of the stage, and then they had a dummy on the other side of the stage. And when it was the whole thing in the rapids with it's something's wrong, it's not your face, it's mine, like the other dummy would kind of be lit up and you didn't know which one was which. And they used to pick on the fact that we always thought Gabriel was the dummy, like just as a band joke. I guess in one of the shows, one of the roadies stood in for the dummy and stood up there almost completely naked as a joke. And so, they just had a good time with that. But I mean, yeah, a lot to unpack there. So just give me your initial thoughts and what we just went through.
Yeah. So, there are 100 theories out there that I think all, given how much of this story or the idea behind this was actually given away by Gabriel, which was very, very little, right, or shared by the band at all. I think the idea was to leave it to the imagination of the listener. What is going on here, right? To me, and I think I can probably summarize my thoughts on this in about a minute. So clock me on this one.
All right.
But this is definitely a story, that the psychedelic nature of it, if you're going to look at it from a realist perspective, there are a handful of things that can bring somebody around to that mindset. And it would be hard drugs or some kind of religious awakening. Maybe a stroke, right?
Well, or hey, I mean, the government was messing around with some crazy mind games at this time too. So
sure.
I mean, you had MK Ultra, all kinds of crazy stuff was happening. So, but most of that was all drug. That was all drug induced.
It's the early 70s. This guy he's angry at the world. And I think something important happens right before the album starts, right? That Rael takes some kind of substance. And as he's sitting there brooding, he starts to come up. And he sees all these, it starts with just a simple vision of this lamb on Broadway. The lamb lies down, then all this weird stuff starts to happen. I know that there's a popular theory that at this point Times Square explodes and Rael is in the flash of seeing his life before his eyes, but that doesn't work for me, right? Only because the story doesn't play out that way. There's no personal reflection for Rael. It's a narrative that he goes through, but it's akin to him walking through the streets, right? He's seeing all of these things the corridor of 29, the
32 doors. Yeah, 32.
Yeah, the corridor of 32 doors. Rael he's on acid or on PCP, you name your drug, right? He's on a heavy hallucinogen. He's stumbled into the lobby of a hotel or a big skyscraper in New York. It's got a whole bunch of elevators, so here's this visualization, the carpet crawlers, people walking through a hotel lobby. All of these things are just easy to visualize if you're just on the street and you're wandering around. But it doesn't stop there, right? The Rael is experiencing in my mind at least, a spiritual journey. He starts off this album or this journey just angry at the world. He's mad. He hates his position, I guess, in life. It's never expressly stated, but we do know he's an angry young man, right?
Right. Yep.
As he progresses through this process, and we just heard it right there at the end, right? He comes out of it with some kind of realization that is triumphant, transitional. It's mind-altering for him. He doesn't come out angry. You don't hear that in the music. You don't hear that in lyrically, right? He's gone through a metamorphosis. So, this is a pretty common experience with LSD, some of the other stronger psychoactive drugs, where they're in introspective, right? So the story certainly takes place in a metaphysical world, right? For Rael, at least in my head, it's a alternate reality or an alternative reality where he's seeing the real world, but he's perceiving it through this introspective journey that he's going on in his own head.
Yeah.
When he ultimately catches up to John, and has that Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker on Dagobah moment where he sees himself.
Oh right, yeah.
On John's face, he spins him around. That is a realization for Rael that all things are connected, right? That even though he started this story as an angry person, he's angry at the world, the whole world is connected, and it's all connected to him, right? And to me, Jarrett, and here's where we push record, just to get Jake's hot take. This is a story about Rael realizing that his anger at the world is ultimately just anger at himself, right? That he's connected to the whole world. And so to be angry at it is to be mad at himself. And therefore, right, if he's connected to the whole world, he can change his situation. And he's in control of his life. And that's the realization. It's not that this city is bringing him down, that, he should lash out and be angry at these things. He's had control all along. That's the great victory, I think, that we hear at the end of this album. Rael's realization that he can control his fate.
I'm going to go with that, and I think it's a very hot take. I think the spiritual journey maybe more so than the drug-induced journey. I think sometimes, drug-induced becomes an easy way to explain this. I think the idea of spiritual journey, maybe it was helped along with some narcotics, I don't know. But I think that what you just said struck a nerve with me, because I've always been trying to figure out exactly the role of Brother John. And the role of Brother John was to give Rael permission to be angry at something else. But what he was really angry at was himself. So John was really a necessary part of Rael's identity that he had to rescue to become whole himself. And him becoming whole is kind of what we hear in that triumphant kind of conclusion that sounds like we're getting ready to play Let's Make a Deal.
Now, I'll add, I've always gotten the vibe that John has already passed away, right? That Rael is chasing a memory of John. John never really speaks to him. They never hardly at all directly interact until the very end, when they come in contact. But Rael is constantly chasing John, and that I could totally see. And I know, again, that's kind of a popular theory, but this, in my head, feeds Rael's anger, right? That John is dead and gone, and
he left him, right? He left him in the cage.
Right, precisely. And of course it's allegorical, right? That he's gone, right? He did leave Rael. He's left Rael.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so Rael is the only, by preserving John's memory, that's the saving of John, right? And then realizing that John is him, right? That he's just as mortal as John is. That's part of that connection to it. It again is all things. It's the universe, and the idea that he's now become part of that by his transcendence in his own mind, his acceptance that this is a reality, right? That Rael is real. The reality is the connection of all things. And the idea that one can't be mad at something else in this grand connection without being mad at one's self, right? Because that thing over there is part of you. Just like John, in his memory or whatever he may be, is part of Rael, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, we bring you The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Like, that was perfect. We're going to leave that there. I'm just so thankful that we have this piece of history. We have this piece of music. I mean, it's on its 50th anniversary. We have this gift from these five guys, where we can just go back and listen to it anytime we want. And I think we did it justice. I think we did a good job kind of walking our audience through it, and talking about the parts we like and then talking about the parts that we're not so sure about. And I think your take on it is as good as anything I would ever come up with or any other fan theories that are out there. I think you're spot on. So we're gonna leave that there. Musically, that last section, anything stand out to you that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, and just musically, the last part of this, what I find most interesting is how much of the story, at least in my interpretation, how much of the story is left to the music, right? Again, employing the reprise and doing it the way that it's done here is super clever. But the epilogue, this is big show kind of stuff, right? And I think, I mentioned earlier what the tour did to the band, and it was rough, right? They went on a North American tour, played the album start to finish every night. No interrupt. Well, I think they took some breaks, and obviously there were the storytelling parts, but the costume changes, the amount of energy. I mean, we just heard it right there in that last 15 minutes of music, how much energy is just dumped out. That's the fourth side of the album. So we're on Act 4 at that point. It's exhausting. And the bummer to me, Jarrett, is that they lost money on that tour, right? They came off like £500,000 in the red. And that's rough. Right? The album itself, I believe, was commercially successful, but the tour was a wrecking ball. And just I think the stress of the recording process into that tour, the stress that the tour playing that tour would take out on you, and then the fact that it didn't make you anything and actually put you in a hole. Our boys are on their heels, right? What are they going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and dude, the last show of the tour got canceled due to lack of interest. So I forget what country they were in, but like they were all expecting, we're gonna have two or three more shows together to kind of wrap this up with Peter. Peter, everybody knew he was leaving. He had already told him he was gonna finish the tour, and then the last show ends up not happening. So they had a very anticlimactic end as a five piece, which is sad. And that's kind of where we're at in the story of Genesis at this point, which is a really compelling question for you and I. Like, what do we do now? like, do we go back into the earlier stuff? Like, do we look at some things that we didn't look at yet? Do we move into a trick of the tail? We're gonna have to keep our kind of fans waiting and guessing. Maybe we'll zig when they think we're gonna zag.
Could be fun.
No spoilers from you.
On.
No spoilers. Yeah.
No, you got to keep your cards close to your chest. Also, we need to figure out what we're going to do.
Yep. That's right. Well, we're just going to keep you guessing. You're going to have to stay tuned in closely to see where we go next. As I said, the Lamb's not going anywhere. You've got it 50 years down the road. You can put it on anytime you want to. We love your comments, so just let us know if we got anything right or wrong, or if you've got a whole nother case study that you want to share with us on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. We are Mild Mannered Supermen, and we hope you have enjoyed The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Until next time.
It's been fun, brother.